take the land. If he resists, bury him with it. That was the order of Felix Reyes, the Mexican cartel boss, on the night they entered Iron Ridge Valley. Just another farm to scare off. Just another old man to erase. But they didn't know he was Phantom, a former U.S. Marine, a ghost from Afghanistan, now living quiet among the dust and fences of southern Arizona. Could one man turn the tables on an entire cartel? This is the story of loyalty, of loss, and a promise no one gets left behind. Welcome to Graceful Valor Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. Iron Ridge Valley, Arizona. A stretch of sunburned land where desert meets mountain, where silence hums louder than traffic, and where most folks know to mind their own business. Wade Thorne had spent the last 8 years rebuilding a life he once thought he'd never want again. A life of peace. He rose with the sun, fed the goats, checked the irrigation lines, and walked the fence perimeter with a thermos of black coffee in hand. His property wasn't much to look at. A rusted barn, a one-story adobe house, and a stubborn pickup that only started on the second try. But for Wade, it was enough. He wasn't just any rancher. Long before the farm, Wade had worn the uniform of the United States Marine Corps. He was deployed 3 times to Afghanistan during the hardest years. Helmand Province, Kandahar, and that cursed outpost in the Korengal Valley. He'd led a recon unit that disappeared into mountains and reappeared weeks later with maps drawn from memory and enemy numbers halved. His call sign back then was Phantom. Quiet, surgical, and terrifying to those on the wrong side of his scope. And though he never said it out loud, that name had stuck long after he traded his rifle for a shovel. But ghosts have a way of following you, especially when the world around you forgets who you used to be. Wade's peace began to crack the day old man Radley's barn went up in flames. It happened just after dusk. No lightning, no faulty wiring, just a sudden blaze, and the heavy thump of tires disappearing into the night. Wade watched from his front porch, the flames licking the dark sky, and something old stirred in his gut. But what would happen when the cartel targeted him next? 2 days later, another neighbor, Maria Chavez, packed up her house and vanished without a word. She'd lived in that adobe cottage for 17 years, then gone. No goodbye, just tire tracks and a realtor sign. Whispers started swirling like dust devils about land offers, about pressure, about threats, and then they came to him. It was a Tuesday morning when the black SUV rolled up Wade's dirt driveway. 2 men stepped out, slicked hair, tailored shirts that didn't belong in ranch country. One held a briefcase. The other had a smile like a knife. "Mr. Thorne," the smiling one began. "We represent a client who's offering top dollar for your property. Very generous. All cash." Wade said nothing at first. He simply sipped his coffee and looked past them toward the barn he'd rebuilt with his own hands. Then he said 2 words. "Not selling." The smile didn't fade. If anything, it sharpened. "You might want to reconsider. The valley's changing and our client has influence." We just turned and walked back inside. They didn't follow, but they didn't leave quietly either. As they backed out, one of them leaned out the window and tossed something onto his porch. A silver coin, Mexican cartel calling card. That night, Wade couldn't sleep. Not from fear, but from memory. He walked out back to the shed behind the barn. It looked like a storage shack to anyone else. Rusted hinges, padlock faded from the sun. But Wade knew better. He crouched in the corner, pried up a false floorboard, and revealed a hatch, a cellar. One he dug himself 6 feet deep and reinforced with steel. Not because he was paranoid, because he knew what the world was capable of. Inside were weapons he hadn't touched in years. Old comms gear, field manuals, a battered photo of 5 men in desert camo grinning like kids on the last day of school. Knox, Raven, Cyrus, Zane, Nash, his brothers. Wade sat there in the dark, the weight of the coin still in his hand. The cartel wasn't just making land grabs. They were probing, testing, and they had no idea who they just threatened. He pulled the satellite phone from its case. The battery still held. His fingers hovered over the keys, then typed one line. Phantom to all units, package compromised. Need eyes on Iron Ridge. He hit send, and for the first time in years, Wade Thorne didn't feel retired. He felt ready. The message Wade sent traveled silently through satellites and encrypted nodes. No names, no coordinates, just that familiar signal, one they hadn't seen in over a decade. And yet, each man who received it stopped cold. The world around them suddenly irrelevant. The first to respond was Knox. He was welding a tractor axle on a ranch in West Texas when his phone buzzed. He paused mid-spark, pulled off his mask, and stared at the screen. Then he stood up, walked to his shed, and began packing. Next was Raven Winters. She had been living in the mountains of Colorado, working as a wilderness survival instructor. When her burner phone lit up, she simply nodded. She didn't need to ask questions. She knew Phantom wouldn't call unless it was serious. She reached under her bed, pulled out a rifle case, and was gone within the hour. Cyrus, the demolition expert, had been off-grid since 2014, hiding in the outskirts of Nevada under a different name. The alert reached him through a buried receiver. When he read it, he smiled. The kind of smile that said, "My debt." He buried the receiver again, grabbed his duffel bag, and disappeared into the desert. Zane, their comm specialist, was working in private cybersecurity in LA. He erased every trace of his presence within minutes. His office was empty by noon. Nash, the team's combat medic, now a trauma nurse in Phoenix, left mid-shift. He just whispered, "Sorry," to a confused patient and never came back. Within 72 hours, 5 people who hadn't shared a room since Kabul were on American soil again. This time, reunited not by war, but by something more personal. They arrived at Wade's farm one by one. No grand reunions, no embraces, just nods, eye contact, silent understanding. These weren't just soldiers. They were families stitched together by firefights and funerals. They didn't need to talk about the past. They were already reading the present. Wade met them at the barn. He'd already cleared out the loft and laid blueprints on the workbench. The terrain map showed the valley's every elevation, waterline, and ridge. Drones buzzed overhead in routine sweeps. He'd upgraded since retirement. The cartels testing the valley, Wade explained. Radley's barn was arson. Chavez was forced out. They came to me last week. Left a coin. You know what that means? Yeah, Knox said grimly. Means they ain't asking next time. They're planning a sweep. Raven added, scanning the map. Likely want control of the whole valley before anyone upstream notices. Zane adjusted his glasses. We could jam their comms, rear surveillance, make them think they're alone. Already started laying traps, Cyrus said. But we'll need time. Claymores, suppressors, thermal cams. I can get it all. Just say the word. Wade looked at each of them. The same faces, a few more lines, maybe a little gray in the beards, but the same fire behind the eyes. This isn't war, Wade said softly. This is home. Knox put a hand on his shoulder. That's why we're here. But could they hold off the cartel's next move? By the second week, the farm didn't look like a farm anymore. Not if you knew what to look for. Tripwires were disguised as irrigation hoses, cameras mounted in birdhouses, fields embedded with pressure sensors. The windmill now held a concealed sniper perch. The chicken coop reinforced steel, a claymore nest waited just under the flower bed. They moved like ghosts, never in groups, always silent. They trained at night using flashbangs to simulate ambushes, mapping every blind corner of the property. Wade had divided the area into 5 zones: Northridge, Orchard Row, Dry Creek, South Fence, and the Barn Core. Each team member was assigned a sector and given full command of its defense. By day, Wade kept up appearances, feeding animals, waving to mail carriers, even chatting at the general store. But word was already spreading. People were disappearing. Land was being bought. And the sheriff, no help. Rumor was he'd been bought months ago. Then came the next fire. This time it was the Barlows. Their garage was torched at 3 a.m. The family barely escaped with their lives. They moved out before dawn. Wade and Knox visited the ruins that afternoon. Scorched earth, melted tires, bullet casings near the fence line. "This ain't pressure," Knox muttered. "It's clearance." "They're clearing resistance," Wade said. "We're next." That night, under a half-moon sky, the team sat around a fire behind Wade's barn. "No more waiting," Wade said, voice steady. "They'll be back sooner than we think." "Then we don't wait for them to knock," Raven said, sharpening a knife. "We listen." "Exactly." Zane nodded. "I've got surveillance already picking up their chatter. They're moving trucks 2 valleys over. Probably planning a soft entry." Cyrus leaned in. "I've got enough C4 to light up a Christmas tree." Nash smiled dryly. "And I've stocked the infirmary. You know, just in case we don't light it up fast enough." Wade looked around at them. "This isn't just for me," he said. "They'll keep coming town by town, farm by farm. People don't have the skills we do, but they still deserve peace." He stood up. "So, if we're doing this, we go all in." No one spoke. They didn't need to. The first test came earlier than expected. 2 nights later, just before midnight, a drone feed lit up Wade's tablet. A convoy, 3 SUVs, 2 dirt bikes heading down the canyon road toward Iron Ridge. "They're probing again," Wade said. But this time, they were ready. He flipped a switch on the wall. Across the property, red lights blinked once, then vanished into the dark. Everyone got into position. No words, just years of muscle memory kicking in. The hunt had begun. The night was too quiet. Even in Iron Ridge Valley, where the stars always shone and the coyotes howled their lonely ballads, something about that night felt wrong, too still, like the desert was holding its breath. From the top of the windmill, Raven adjusted her scope. Movement 400 meters out. SUV. 2 bikes flanking. Lights off. She whispered into her throat mic. In the barn, Knox clicked off the safety on his rifle. Time to make him regret picking this dirt road. Wade stood by the old oak near the south fence line, camouflaged beneath the tree's thick branches. He didn't flinch, didn't speak. He just watched. The cartel convoy slowed as it reached the outer property line. The lead SUV idled at the gate. "They're testing us," Zane muttered from the surveillance van. "Wait for it." The second SUV rolled forward, tires crunching over gravel. The driver leaned out, scanning the field. They hadn't noticed the tripwire stretched low across the dirt. They hit it. A series of charges detonated in rapid succession. Not deadly, just blinding. Flashbangs embedded in the fence post erupted, lighting the night like sudden lightning. Men screamed. The driver swerved and clipped a hidden spike strip. Tires exploded. Then silence again, but not for long. Targets disoriented, Raven called out. "Permission to engage." "Green," Wade replied calmly. She squeezed the trigger. One down, then another. Precision shots. Non-lethal where possible. Knees, shoulders, hands. The objective was message, not massacre. Knox moved through the orchard like a shadow, subduing one of the bikers with a brutal takedown. Nash appeared seconds later, zip-tying the man and checking for vitals. On the other side, Cyrus activated the next wave of surprises. A net trap launched from hidden barrels caught 2 more men mid-sprint. Zane scrambled signals, jamming cartel radios. Panic spread among the remaining intruders. They scattered trying to regroup. But Iron Ridge wasn't a battlefield. It was a trap. And every step they took led them deeper into the maze. One by one, they were taken down. No gunfire was wasted. No step unplanned. Within 11 minutes, all but 2 of the attackers were incapacitated. The final 2 tried to flee. Wade intercepted them near the creek bed. One raised his hands. The other ran. Wade dropped the runner with a knee strike and turned to the man with his hands up. "You speak English?" The man nodded nervously. "Yes? Yes. Good. You go back. You tell them Phantom's not dead." He tossed the man a coin. The same silver peso they'd thrown on his porch. "But you are," Wade added, "if you ever come back." At sunrise, the valley was still. The team gathered in the barn. No injuries, no casualties, just sweat and silence. "Well," Knox exhaled, wiping his face. "That was surgical." "Too easy," Raven said. "They weren't ready." "They will be next time," Wade replied. They all knew what that meant. The survivors would run back to whoever sent them. The cartel would know they didn't just face stubborn farmers. They'd poked something old, something trained, something deadly. It wouldn't be over. It had just begun. But what would happen when the cartel sent their deadliest fighter? Meanwhile, 300 miles south in Sonora, Mexico, a mansion buzzed with tension. Felix Reyes, the cartel boss overseeing Iron Ridge's sweep, stood shirtless in his marble-floored office. On the TV screen, security footage from a cartel scout drone showed blacked-out images of the ambush. One by one, his men dropped fast, clean, efficient. His phone vibrated. "Survivor returned. Says Phantom leads them," his lieutenant whispered. Felix's face froze. "El Fantasma," he muttered. "No, Chief, not ours. They're Phantom." Felix turned toward the shadows. From the far end of the room, a tall man emerged, thin, pale, wearing a priest's collar. The real El Fantasma, cartel legend, torturer, ghost. He smiled faintly. "So, they've summoned a ghost." Felix poured 2 glasses of tequila and handed one to the man. "Then we send them something worse." The storm rolled in just past midnight. Iron Ridge had seen its share of desert rain before. Sudden bursts, dry thunder, brief howls that vanished by dawn. But this storm was different. It crawled in from the south, slow and deliberate, carrying a humidity that clung to the skin and turned dirt to mud. Wade stood by the barn, eyes on the horizon. Lightning flashed in the distance, outlining shapes along the canyon ridge. He lifted his binoculars. "Convoy, 6 vehicles, armored tactical pattern," he muttered into his radio. "Looks like they brought a Real party this time," Knox replied from the orchard line. "Confirmed," Zane added from the surveillance van. "Thermal reads, 28 heat signatures, heavily armed. And there's one more." Wade's jaw tensed. "ID moving like command, detached from formation. Could be him." "El Fantasma," Raven whispered from the windmill. They came in fast. The convoy split into 3 directions. 2 flanks around the ridge, one breaching the front gate. No lights, no hesitation. Cyrus triggered the first wave of defenses. Flash mines lit the night and steel caltrops shredded their tires. But these men were trained. They rolled out in formation. Rifles raised, pushing forward. From the barn loft, Raven fired. Her shots found their marks. Quick, efficient takedowns. But they kept coming. At the orchard line, Knox engaged 2 advancing squads, drawing them into a kill box surrounded by tripwire grenades. The resulting explosion tore through the rain and sent bodies flying. Still, they advanced. "They've studied the terrain," Zane called out. "They're avoiding known traps." "Means someone briefed them," Wade replied. "He's here." Wade moved through the darkness, silent and swift. He flanked around the creek bed, using the high grass for cover. Nash was already tending to a minor wound on Cyrus. A graze on the shoulder. "They're pushing south fence," Nash shouted. "I'll hold them," Wade said. He sprinted through the mud, slid behind the steel chicken coop, and pulled the latch on the emergency cache, smoke grenades, and a modified M4 with thermal sights. He moved like the ghost they once called him. And then chaos. Explosions rocked the main field. El Fantasma's second wave breached the barn, forcing Raven to fall back. Close quarters now. Blades came out. Gunfire erupted at near point blank. Raven dropped two with her sidearm before one of them slammed her into the wall. Knox appeared just in time, dragging the man off her and finishing him with a combat knife. Zane's van was hit with an EMP pulse. His screens went dark. "They're jamming me!" he yelled, slamming the console. Wade didn't respond. He was already inside the smoke, silent, calculating. He picked off intruders with brutal efficiency, weaving between shadows, striking with precision. Then through the smoke, he saw him tall, collar high, face pale under the moonlight. El Fantasma, their eyes locked. No words, no mercy. They charged. The fight wasn't cinematic. No speeches, no slow motion, just raw brutality. Wade tackled El Fantasma into the mud. The man countered with a hidden blade, slicing Wade's arm. Wade grunted, rolled, and slammed an elbow into his ribs. El Fantasma grinned, blood in his teeth. "You're slower than they say." Wade spat, "You're dumber than you look." They clashed again. Fists, knives, knees. Each move was trained, precise, lethal. But Wade had something El Fantasma didn't. He wasn't fighting for a paycheck. He was fighting for home. In the barn, Raven and Knox regrouped with Cyrus. Nash treated another gash on Raven's shoulder. "We need eyes on Wade," Raven hissed. He went silent. "Then we find him," Knox said. They pushed into the field, bullets flying around them. Zane finally rebooted one drone and caught the heat signatures. Two figures locked in combat near the south fence. "I've got him!" Zane shouted. "Yes, it's not just it. That's just alone." Wade was on his knees panting. El Fantasma pressed a knife to his throat. "You've made this hard, old man," the ghost said. "But not enough." Wade smiled. "Wasn't trying to stop you." He tapped the hidden remote in his hand. Behind them, a claymore detonated. Not toward them, but behind El Fantasma, knocking him forward just enough for Wade to reverse the grip and throw him to the ground. Rain poured harder now. Wade straddled him, blade in hand, but he didn't kill him. He looked up, saw the others rushing in. "Secure him," Wade said. "Alive." They bound El Fantasma, unconscious and bloodied. By dawn, the valley was soaked. But the cartel was gone. The surviving fighters, those who weren't dead or detained, had fled. They'd seen enough, and word would spread. They had fought ghosts and lost. The morning after the battle, the valley was soaked in silence. Rain still dripped from broken leaves and scorched beams. Blackened patches of soil smoked quietly where claymores had exploded just hours before. Birds did not sing. Even the coyotes, usually howling at dawn, stayed away. Wade stood in the center of his farm, mud on his boots, a torn sleeve hanging at his elbow. He watched the sun break through heavy clouds, soft, golden, indifferent. The others stood nearby. Raven with her arm in a sling. Knox, blood still crusted on his temple. Cyrus and Zane checking the drones one last time. Nash packing the field kit. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They had won. But the victory was strange. Not joyful. Not even satisfying. Just necessary. Wade turned toward the south field where El Fantasma was being loaded into a government SUV. A DEA team had arrived at sunrise along with Border Patrol and two unmarked black vehicles that didn't offer names or explanations. One agent, tall and broad-shouldered, approached Wade. "You took him alive?" the agent asked, surprised. Wade nodded. "He's worth more breathing." The agent hesitated. "How'd you manage this? You a contractor?" "No," Wade said simply. "Just a farmer." Within hours, the government presence tripled. Helicopters circled. More black SUVs arrived. Reporters tried to push through blocked roads, but were kept at bay. Officials in suits stepped carefully through the mud, glancing at the traps, the bullet holes, the damage. But they didn't ask too many questions because deep down they didn't want the answers. One man handed Wade a card. "If anything else happens, you call this number." Wade didn't even glance at it. He handed it to Zane. "I'll keep it off-grid," Zane said with a smirk. By the third day, the outsiders had gone. No interviews, no press conference, just the way Wade liked it. The story that leaked out was simple. A cartel attack failed. Some brave citizens defended their land. The suspects fled or were captured. No mention of Phantom. No mention of Delta Force. Just quiet headlines, the kind that disappear in 2 days. But something else had changed. The people of Iron Ridge came back. It started with Maria Chavez returning to her cottage with her brothers. Then came the Barlows, who began rebuilding their garage. Soon neighbors who had once packed and fled began trickling back with paint buckets, hammers, and food baskets. Someone rebuilt the general store sign. Someone else repainted the schoolhouse roof. And Wade, he went back to mending fences. A week later, something strange happened. A teenager about 16 wearing a cowboy hat 2 sizes too big showed up at Wade's property with an old duffel bag. "You're the one who stopped them, right?" the boy asked. Wade didn't reply. The kid dropped the bag. "I don't know how to shoot or fight or any of that, but I want to help. I want to learn. So next time we're not scared." Wade looked at him for a long time, then nodded. Within a month, the farm became something else entirely. People came in quiet groups, curious, unsure, but ready. Wade and his team taught them how to read terrain, how to build safe perimeters, how to treat wounds and recognize danger signs. They didn't call it training, they called it preparation. By fall, every household in Iron Ridge had a plan. Some had radios, some had escape routes. All had someone looking out. Not a militia, not vigilantes, just neighbors awake now, aware. And in the center of it all, 5 shadows watching from the background, never asking for thanks. One morning, Wade stood near the creek bed where it had all started. The sun was rising, burning away the last fog. Raven joined him, sipping coffee from a dented thermos. "You ever miss it?" she asked. Wade tilted his head. "Miss what?" "The missions, the callouts, the adrenaline." Wade watched the breeze move across the field. "Not really," he said. "But I miss the reason we did it." Raven nodded. "Feels like we've got it again." They stood in silence for a while. Then Wade spoke. "Some battles never leave you, but neither does the will to protect. In our darkest moments, kindness still finds a way. Often in the quietest places. Not everyone who helps wants recognition. Some just need to know that today someone isn't going hungry. And sometimes that alone is enough to change a life. You may forget the story, but if no one retells it, history stays silent forever. Subscribe to Graceful Valor Stories, where justice is honored, kindness is remembered, and no act of quiet heroism is ever lost.